And to tell us more about the country's stock market and how the secondary Kosdaq index has been narrowing its gap with the KOSPI, global strategist Daniel Yoo from Kiwoom Securities joins us in the studio today. So good to see you.
Pleasure to be here.
All right, so the country's secondary index, the Kosdaq, although it did drop today, it has been generally on an upward trend and narrowing its gap with the KOSPI. So, I mean, what does this mean for the local capital market?
Right. If you think about the Korean equity market in general, the KOSPI is trading a P multiple of 9 times and Kosdaq is trading at about 20 times, which is about 30 to 50% discount to the global equity market P multiples. So therefore, there's been always discount due to concerns such as the corporate governance issues of Korean companies and also the skewedness towards the Samsung Electronics and the IT sector and chaebols. And also people were worried about the new growth engines. Now, if you're trying to boost the Kosdaq, obviously this will create more money flows to small and medium-sized enterprises, as well as creating a new growth engines. So therefore, this will benefit the overall equity market in general, and there will be a trigger effect from Kosdaq to KOSPI in the longer term. So overall market capitalization could rise, and the discount to the global economy will disappear over the period of time, I think.
So what is exactly driving the latest Kosdaq rally?
Right, it's all about government's boosting measures, I think. If you look at some of the measures that's been introduced, the retail investors will get a tax benefit of 3 million won, if you invest into the Kosdaq venture funds, or any pension funds buying the Kosdaq stocks, they'll get exemption on the trading tax. Also, the composite index will be introduced, as well as the Kosdaq venture fund will be introduced by the Korea Exchange. Also, the listing of the Kosdaq by Korean companies will be lowered. The requirements will be lowered. So all this will increase the retail participations towards the Kosdaq market as well as the equity market. Now, Korea, the retail participation to the equity market and capital market is very low. We think that this will gradually rise with the government boosting measures because of a lot of these tax benefits and other measures that are happening. So we think that the re-rating of Korean equity market can happen starting with this Kosdaq measures.
Now, cryptocurrencies have been in the spotlight recently. So what could be the relationship between the secondary Kosdaq and cryptocurrencies?
Right. Well, cryptocurrencies, obviously the retail investors invest. As I said, retail investors' investment into capital market is very important. Now, cryptocurrency, it's very hard to value. It is important that the blockchain technology is very important, but as a substitution to the currency, it's very difficult to answer. So it's against kind of government and central bank. So therefore, I don't know what the fair value of the the bitcoins or the cryptocurrency is. Now, looking into the Minsky models, the smart money goes into these new technologies, and then institutional money, and then public money. So right now, with the listing in US, the public monies are pouring into the cryptocurrencies, and it had a significant rally. And after that, usually it settles down with a big crash. So that's what's happening right now. Now, with that, a lot of the local investors invest into these cryptocurrencies, and the money will probably flow out of that and look for other entry points, and which will be Kosdaq, we think. So right now, Kosdaq, the valuations are still very cheap compared to the global market. And yes, there is a skewness towards the bio stocks, but nevertheless, overall 150 companies in Kosdaq are around trading at 20 times P multiples, and the return on equities are rising, and profits are rising as well. So all that means is that money will flow from cryptocurrency to Kosdaq, we think.
And you just mentioned there are some concerns about skewedness to bio and pharmaceutical shares, and obviously Celltrion, biosimilar developer, has been dominating the Kosdaq market. So there has been concerns that there's too much focus on perhaps certain sectors and companies.
Right, so we have to understand what Kosdaq is made of. About 40 to 45% of the market capitalization of Kosdaq is bio and pharmaceutical related sector. Now, trying to value the pharmaceutical sector or the bio sector is very difficult because you don't see the earnings yet.
Right.
And it might take another 1 to 2, even longer years. So if you're just looking at that, definitely Kosdaq could be a bubble. But remaining 55% of the market cap, And if you look at a lot of those companies, it's IT component companies, the China plays, and the consumer stocks, and all these stocks. If you look at the valuations, they're very cheap. So if you add all of it, currently the P multiple is around 20 times, price to book is around 2.5 times book, and return on equity is about 15% plus, which is significantly cheaper than any other growth indices in the world. So therefore, we think that as long as earnings growth is there and there's a continuation of the inflow of the money is occurring, we think that Kosdaq is a lot better way to invest than the cryptocurrency.
But then what would happen if Celltrion shifts to the benchmark KOSPI?
Right. Then we have to look at the capitalizations and percentage of the capitalizations. If you look at Kosdaq as a whole, it's about 300 trillion won, and the KOSPI is total of 1,600 trillion won. So the KOSPI divided by total market capitalization, Kosdaq divided by total market capitalization is about 20%. Now, Celltrion and the other related companies shifting, that amounts to about 50 to 60 trillion won moving. So then the market capitalization will fall for the Kosdaq as a percentage of total from 20% to 15%. So a lot of the investment that's happening to the Kosdaq, they're not buying specifically of the companies. They're buying index ETFs, and obviously government is trying to introduce funds, right? So money will flow and the market capitalization become lower. So we think that supply and demand will be actually benefiting the Kosdaq index. So yes, in the short term, there can be some jitters and volatilities due to the moving of Celltrion. But in a longer term, medium to longer term, we think that more money will flow into the Kosdaq, and therefore the index will stabilize and continue to show some rising trend over the next 12 months.
And earlier we talked about government measures to boost the Kosdaq market. Now, comparing these plans to the ones of previous administrations, how effective do you think the government's plans will be in boosting the secondary market bourse in the long run?
Well, I mean, you got to think about what happened at the time of Nomuyen's policies. At that time, the KOSPI had a big rally from 2003 to 2007, 2008, almost lasted 5 years. During that period of time, the KOSPI went from 1,000 to 2,000, went up 100%. But even before that, it started from 500, so it went up about 200%. So therefore, as long as there is some policies that try to focus on a specific index or equity market, we think that this will benefit the overall market capitalizations in the future. So we think that Kosdaq can rise from what it started around 600 level. Now it's already 900.
Right.
I think they can go up even as high as 1,100, 1,200.
Wow.
So, and if you look at our residual income models, which will look at what is a fair value of a index, we calculate that Kosdaq's fair value has risen from 600 to now already 1,100. So it's still at cheap level, we think. So with the government policy and the proper way of introducing the directions to invest into these companies, we think that Kosdaq rally can continue and here to stay for another at least 12 to 24 months.
But then, are we seeing signs of perhaps overheating in the Kosdaq market?
I think that everybody talks about the credit borrow to buy the equities. Now, the recent borrowings to buy the equities has reached around 13 trillion won, which, if you compare as 1,900 trillion won market capitalization, it's only 0.7%
so
of
not
total,
much.
which is not much. Now, in the past, when we had that Nomuyen's push to the KOSPI, the credit percentage went up to as high as 2-3%, which is much higher than now. Also, if we compare to China, when there's a big rally of Chinese market, the credit borrowed reached almost 9 to 10% of total market capitalization. So 0.7% versus these numbers are minuscule. So therefore, I think that yes, there's more and more money going in. Yes, the credit borrow is increasing, but that level is not high enough to believe that the market is picking.
All right. Well, the KOSPI has been quite stagnant lately compared to the Kosdaq, and it hasn't been really booming compared to what it did last year. So what's your outlook on the KOSPI?
Well, KOSPI, it's taking a little bit of time. If you look at last year, 2017, first half, the KOSPI did very strong run. And then the second half is the Kosdaq. The reason I think the KOSPI is kind of timid right now is because the fourth quarter results came in for Samsung Electronics and IT sector. And because of the heavy won appreciation that happened, the earnings are coming in below expectations. So that's kind of introducing some lagging effect. However, we think that currency appreciation will not accelerate from here. We think they will probably stabilize somewhat. And also, there's a global economic growth continue to happen. So IT sector, we think that it is right now in a super cycle. So therefore, earnings will continue to beat the expectation in the future. So therefore, cost will start to go up again. But the timing-wise, we have to see the numbers. So therefore, we have to wait until probably the first quarter results comes in. So which will be like April or May. Thereafter, we think that KOSPI will do very good run. We expect around 20% increase in KOSPI this year.
And like we heard in the report, the Bank of Korea kept its key interest rates steady while revising up its growth forecast for this year for the Korean economy to 3%. So how does this come into play in regards to the local stock markets?
Right. Now, in terms of interest rate increase for Bank of Korea, it's much more difficult than U.S. The reason for that is because if you look at the loan-to-deposit ratio of the Korean banks, it has reached well above 90%. It's almost to 100%. That's what means is that there's quite a bit of loans that given to the consumers. So therefore, there is a difficulties of boosting the domestic consumptions. However, Korea's as far as GDP is concerned, 70% comes from exports. So if the global economy is very, very strong, then yes, you can create 3% growth in the GDP, and which will benefit which companies? Not consumers, but the exporters. So therefore, won appreciation is also important. So all that related, we think that the earnings for the Korean companies will be coming in strong due to global economic growth, which resulting into 3% growth in the Korean economy, and the earnings growth can lead into a equity market going up.
Now, China's economy grew 6.9% in 2017, topping the government's target of around 6.5%, despite financial risks stemming from, I guess, economic restructuring led by the Chinese government. So this must be good news for the global stock market.
Yes, obviously it is. Every year, even 2015, 2016, or long before that, 2013, every year everybody talks about Chinese debt. The corporate debts are high. It's already, everybody knows about this. But there are some issues that where you can kind of shake the economies. And what it means is if you have to look at the net interest margin of the banking sector, can they control the non-performing assets? Is margin stabilizing? And all this is very important. And also how to stabilize it is because if the economic growth comes in strong, then you can stabilize it. So the economic growth coming in better than expectation resulted into net interest margin coming in better than expectations. And therefore, you cannot shake the economies at this point, which means that the emerging market will do very well. So this year, we expected this to happen. Emerging market will do better than the developed market. If you look at the best performing market in the world right now, it's Russia. And then after that, it will be Vietnam, and also Chinese, the largest caps, and others. So we think that this year is emerging markets year. The equity market in general will do well with the China being stable.
All right. Thank you so much for your insight today.
Thank you.